Welcome to Jurassic World.
Guests, welcome to the Jurassic World Minute, where we discuss Jurassic World 1 minute at a time. Beware the splash zone. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And here we are back to discuss minute 32 of Jurassic World. But David, before we get to that, let's jump over to Jurassic-Pedia.com for a moment to discuss the Mosasaur feeding show. Article here up by Tyrannosaur TJ, I should say. And I'm guessing this is one of the early ones too, just with the images used for the arena itself and the feeding show, but we're going to get to the feeding show itself. But we sort of discussed when we had the Indominus stadium concept art up, how the architecture, the big massive glass sort of shelter over the top of the stadium, and that here it's sort of a similar or a little bit different design, the big sweeping arching sort of roof section above the stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell if that's supposed to be glass or if it's just open air with lattice work across, or what it is.
I think it's just lattice work. The entire thing kind of reminds me of like a large sports stadium, you know?
Yeah. It does make me wonder how effective a roof that high up above the crowd would be for rain or shading from the hot tropical sun. It's more just a stylistic or architectural design choice, and not a practical thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get more into the amphitheatre or the arena itself when we get to the minutes. The article here, a bit of a write up on the Mosasaurus, the feeding show itself, and the announcer that stands out in front of the crowd, encouraging everyone to clap at key moments to make the Mosasaur happy, because she does love a bit of an applause. But yeah, head over to Jurassic-Pedia.com for that and many more articles.
Mm-hmm.
Our DNA excavators discover new species every year, but consumers want them bigger, louder, more teeth. The good news? Our advances in gene splicing have opened up a whole new frontier.
Alright, Dave, ready to get into minute 32?
Sure.
As we ended a horrific minute of Jurassic World, we open on minute 32, as Claire walks down the stairs to Owen's bungalow. She tells him that she'll be in her car, and after a zinger telling him he stinks, walks away, leaving Owen speechless. At the 20-second mark, we cut to a flyover of the Mosasaur lagoon, approaching the grandstands and the Mosasaur feeding show. As we get shots of some spectators looking at their girlfriends on their phones, the announcers telling the crowd how the Mosasaur hunted. At the 35-second mark, we see a shark starting to be taken out on a gantry, and the announcer continues, "Okay folks, let's see if she's still hungry, after already eating today." At the 41-second mark, the shark stops as we look down past it towards the water. The announcer continues, "She's a little shy, so make sure you give her a big round of applause when she comes out." And as the minute ends, the mighty Mosasaur raises from the lagoon, grabs the shark, and falls back into the water, wetting everyone in the splash zone. As we open on minute 32, the bad nightmare is almost over as Claire walks down the stairs towards Owen, and she says, "I'll be in the car and stands really close to him, dangerously close, and that's when we get the little zinger from her. You might want to change your shirt. They're very sensitive to smells.
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought they're very sensitive to bad smells, would be more of a put down. After the back and forth these two have had the last 2 minutes, she wants to have the last word here and comment on his sweaty smell.
Mm-hmm.
Go Claire.
I always kind of felt more that she was speaking about the fact that since he's been working on the bike, that he probably smells also of used motor oil, which itself does not smell pleasant as somebody who has worked with used motor oil, but because like a natural non-deodorized scent is technically better. I mean, I know that she's being used as kind of just insulting him, but realistically speaking, like natural scent would be a better kind of masking scent than, say, deodorant.
Yeah.
Which in fact might even be why he doesn't even wear it,
Well, I can only think of Sarah's line in Lost World saying no cologne, about the whole non-interference thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going there to study, trying to stay under the radar, not going to an enclosure with the animals, because you can almost guarantee she's got some sort of perfume all over her.
Well, in the deleted scene that was later, we do see that he mentions it to her, that she smells of perfume, and that the dinosaurs are going to notice it, wherein she then douses herself with dinosaur.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very glad that stayed a deleted scene.
Yep. But then again, they're going to the observation window to have a look at things. There's no real suggestion he's going to go in the pen with the Indominus. I've seen it more of, you're going to come and get him on your Mercedes, I don't want that dirty shirt touching my German leather, or European leather, whatever they're made of now.
Mm-hmm.
But this sort of just causes Owen to stand there quietly, watching her walk back to the car by himself. And that's when we get a transition to the lagoon, and once again get the pair of birds flying across the Mosasaur enclosure. Another great one of these sort of establishing shots we get in the film. You can see the full amphitheatre made up of the 5 two-tier grandstands, the high curved roof above, whether it's glass or just open air that I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Off to the left you can sort of see, it almost looks like another main street behind the trees leading off away from the stadium there, and again packed with people.
I think that area itself is meant to be more of like private accommodations, because we can see the because I think this is in the area where those, not sure if intimate would be the right word, but those more private expensive suites were at,
Yeah, well you can see the bungalows in the trees at the far end. Well, as I said last minute, over on the right there again you can see sort of that beautifully manicured grass, just an open grassy area. Again, where you could sort of grab your food and sit down and have a picnic, listening to the sounds of the island, the animals roaring or bellowing.
Well, the entire Main Street area is a very beautiful area. I mean, even looking at the waters in the immediate area, you can see how the sandy bottom mixed with, looks like possibly a seagrass bottom. It's all very, very tropical, I was watching Flipper from 1996 the other night, and I'm not sure if anybody remembers that with, 17-year-old Elijah Wood in it. And I'm just like, I mean, I don't even care about how crappy the story is or how it's not even close to being like the original 1960s TV series. I just want to find a ramshackle boat like Paul Hogan and run off to a Bahama island all my own.
Well, that goes back to last minute talking about his bungalow, Owen's bungalow. Same thing in that movie. Just the fact that he's got that shack on the beach. and just sort of collected everything. It's sort of washed up on everything else and just has it there in case it needs to be used one day.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time since I've seen that. Was that filmed in the Bahamas? I know it takes place there, but...
It was supposed to take place in the Florida Keys, but it was filmed in the Bahamas.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, it definitely makes me want to have my own little Bahama vacation.
I thought it might have been another link back to Kauai, or one of the Hawaiian Islands. But
I'm sure those are also very beautiful.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Probably time for a rewatch if I can find it somewhere. We cut to a crowd of onlookers as an announcer's saying over the PA, Mosasaur was thought to have hunted near the surface of the water where it would feed on anything it could sink its teeth into. And anyone had seen a Mosasaur skeleton or jaw, it's got a lot of teeth, as we'll see later. And we cut to a shot of the announcer on the bridge, sort of out overhanging the electric fence and the water. Electric fences surrounding this entire lagoon. They don't want this Mosasaur to get out at all.
No.
Which I don't... Okay, we see later the only reason it gets to the Indominus is because the fence is broken, but it's not like one of those early things you see from the Triassic, the fish that has legs. I don't know how far inland the Mosasaur would be able to get if it was able to get off the shore.
Well, I think it was mostly marine itself. It wasn't really more of a kind of lake dwelling area or creature. It was more of a saltwater traversing animal.
Yeah, and once again we have Zach here ignoring her and being on his phone, looking at a photo of his girlfriend. The announcer continues. So whatever it can sink its teeth into, including large turtles, large fish, even smaller mosasaurs, so cannibals, which I suppose a lot of carnivores would eat their own.
Oh, yeah,
if need be.
There's definitely evidence that T-Rex cannibalized carcasses.
Yeah, yep. I know for a fact that dairy cows drink milk, so I don't even know what you'd put that into. That'd be like if chickens ate eggs, which I'm sure they do as well. She turns to face the lagoon as we cut to a shark hanging from a winch system that begins to move out over the water. And this is our little Jaws reference here. You think Jaws was a big killer? We're about to have a bigger killer in this film.
Oh no, bigger Jaws! Now we gotta team up and take down bigger Jaws.
Well, Fallen Kingdom shows us it's out in the water now, so the announcer continues, okay folks, let's see if she's still hungry after already eating today, so obviously not the first feeding show. I wonder how often.
And I know this was discussed when this scene was first shown in trailers, aren't great whites a endangered species? And the obvious answer to that is InGen probably clones their own stock of great white sharks, because if you can clone a dinosaur, cloning a living species is probably no problem, for them,
Yeah. I wonder how they come to shark. I suppose it's not like goat with the T-Rex. I suppose there wouldn't really be any other large fish except for whales. I don't think you'd have an orca hanging out over here. I think too many people have a problem with that, but a shark, well, it's a killing machine. It deserves to be eaten. Again, as you said, being genetically created, they might not even have much brain activity. They're just sort of grown large enough that they can sustain the Mosasaur. Again, this is only for the show too. I'm sure this isn't their only diet.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I know that there's this kind of scene in particular that was used mostly in the viral marketing. This scene in general was used heavily in the viral marketing, and I recall a lot of fans speculating whether or not there would be a kind of blackfish reference through the scene here. If anybody's familiar, Blackfish was a SeaWorld expose documentary that kind of was not very friendly towards SeaWorld. It kind of is showing them in a very negative light and how they treat the animals in the park. And so I know a lot of people were kind of expecting a somewhat what's the word? There's a somewhat kind of Blackfish take on Masrani's treatment of the dinosaurs in the park, that they weren't very well treated, that they probably were kept in these small pens and not very kind of that they just weren't treating the dinosaurs correctly. And I know that I personally was kind of disappointed that we never got that. Because I think Jurassic World, especially considering the timeliness, would have been a great time to have shown a kind of Blackfish thing like that, you know?
Yeah, well, I wasn't aware of that, so thank you for explaining what that was. It's sort of a common issue with most zoos. I know a lot of circuses now have been shut down because of animals, or circuses that involve animals anyway. I know there's always activists and that are going after the sea worlds and the marine parks of the world. Even the zoos, we just had the Tiger King and all that sort of stuff on as well.
And of course, the degenerates are, and the not to hate on anybody who likes the show, but I know that there's been this kind of push in the United States where people are like, well, he was the hero. I don't care if he was abusing animals. The woman sacrificed her girlfriend, her boyfriend, or husband, I mean. Like, exactly. That's how I felt. Like, can we not turn the animal abuser into the hero of the story?
Well, to bring it back to Jurassic World and get away from Joe Exotic, it sort of would be a different take, but I suppose again it's always more so been that sort of us trying to control nature and the majesty of having these extinct animals back, and not so much just a zoo filled with normal animals again. Having, just wonder how you do it. Even just at the ferry where we see Gray and Zach get on the Nublar ferry, if there was protesters there or something, just something small like that, saying let the animals free. Or
I know that when in kind of the early, before we really saw the trailers, I was kind of expecting Jeff Goldblum as Ian Malcolm's in the park somewhere with a sign down with Jurassic World.
I think that's the problem you have with it being 10 years after, or being open for 10 years. If it was the first month or first couple of months after opening, where you've got these large crowds, everything's working as it is, all the G-Wagons and all the vehicles are sparkly and brand new, all the gyrospheres are sparkly and brand new, there's no rust on this park at all, apart from maybe a couple of the maintenance vehicles. It'd make more sense, and yes, have your Jeff Goldblum cameo or your Grant cameo. Even have InGen security doing something in the film before ACU come in. They had to crash tackle someone that tried to jump in with the Mosasaur, or free the T-Rex or something. Just have someone that's got to the island to not sabotage, but just do something stupid like try and push a baby Triceratops out of the petting zoo or something. Run, be free.
Gets drunk and tries to ride the baby Triceratops. What we've been talking about. Yeah. But what you said did kind of bring up an interesting point, because there probably are those Nick Van Owen types who would try to sabotage this, kind of inadvertently maybe, but they do the whole Free Willy thing, you know, and then find out that's a really, really bad idea and get eaten by the T-Rex.
Yeah. And I just wonder if something like that maybe did happen and it hasn't been reported. It's like, no, that person wasn't here. We never seen him. erase all the footage of Nick Van Owen getting on the ferry and coming to shore.
Now we're trying to get into a Masrani being a little sinister.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you did mention back when we were talking about the siblings and that Masrani may be having some dead bodies down the basement.
But yeah, you do bring up an interesting thing with the rust, though, because in the first movie, the park hadn't even opened yet, and we were already starting to get moss on some of the buildings and like vines starting to grow up the sides of things. And even in the original book, there was a crack in the concrete that allowed a vine to get to poke through that allowed Grant and Lex to cross the moat. And I always thought that was kind of an interesting little feature. It's kind of really overlooked, but I think I mentioned this before on here, how it kind of is a miniature message of how nature breaks through mankind's barriers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep, and that's one of the things I've always loved from the franchise since The Lost World, is just nature's always there, willing to take over. We've talked about it a lot with this, some of Hammond's lines in Trespasser. Somewhere in a dark, dirty room, history was made, all that sort of stuff. Even the pre-filming script for Lost World, just having this main street covered in vines and stuff, all impassable by vehicles, but the characters having to climb over fallen trees and all that sort of stuff. And yes, what we get later in the film with the visitor centre just being all overgrown because the jungle's come back. That's not my issue with that scene. We'll get to that scene when we get there. But yeah, just the whole, that's one of my biggest issues. The park's been open for 10 years, but we've got brand new G-Wagons, we've got brand new Mercedes. Yes, we could have just had a fit out and replaced the vehicle fleet, but you've got to have some of those older vehicles somewhere as well, not just one old Chevy maintenance truck. Even the gyrospheres, we'll get to that when we get to the gyrospheres. they should be a little bit more scratched up.
Yeah.
Being park attractions, but yeah, the shark stops and we can see down past it to the surface of the water, into the lagoon, and we get the announcer in the background saying she's a little shy, so be nice and give her a hand when she comes out. This is going to sound like a stupid question, but do marine wildlife have ears?
Yes. Though they close off when they're underwater, so it's kind of a muffled sound. They understand muffled sounds, but they can hear.
Yeah, God, I do know. Yeah, I know dolphins have got the holes there behind the eyes. I suppose now you mentioned Free Willy earlier, everyone pounding on the glass, and all the signs you see in water parks now, don't tap on the glass, because sound does carry a lot underwater, and I'm sure it should be able to hear the roar of the crowd, and much like the flare earlier with the Tyrannosaur, throw that flare and it knows food. If she hears the roar of the crowd, it probably means food as well, if she's been conditioned that way. Gray tries to get Zach's attention, but he's too busy still looking at his girlfriend on the phone. And that's when we cut back to the shark as the Mosasaur bursts from the water, roaring and engulfing the shark in one whole bite. That one trick wonder that she's going to do for the rest of the franchise. But I do love here how Gray's mouth is wide open. Like, I don't know what they told him to expect or what they put in front of him to make him react, but it's a genuine reaction here of this CG animal coming out of the water.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone's got their phones up videoing the spectacle.
And I think the great thing is, though, you can even see when we get the pullback and we get the splash here, you can see the screens of people's phones, and you can actually see the Mosasaur and the hotel in the background all on the people's screens. Because these first two tiers here was an actual people. The whole thing was all people. The rest of it was all CGI, but this first two tiers was an actual set, and it was made to actually move up and down, as we'll see later in the next minute.
Yeah, well, it's a nice little touch that your eye is on that Mosasaur coming out of the water and biting the shark. But as you said, yeah, just looking down, seeing exactly the same thing as you're able to see on everyone's phones. Whether, I don't know if that's just CG'd in or whether they played. Well, I don't think you'd be able to see. There'd be glare from light and everything else blocking screens, and so I'm guessing that's all CG.
Oh yeah, it is.
But we cut to Gray and Zach as the Mosasaur begins to drop back down into the water, and the shark gets torn off the cable with a loud twang, which doesn't seem like a real good release system. If that cable snaps, it's going to go back and cut half the crowd off. Decapitation or some sort of incident anyway. Just because that